Good morning from a frosty and slightly sunny day on Dartmoor. And I want to talk about the big picture. Saturn, Neptune, and Saturn, Pluto as well. They're the two big definers of the times we're in, because Pluto and Neptune are the two outermost planets, the two biggest transformers. And when they come together with Saturn, as they do every 35 to 40 years, Saturn is the planet that makes things manifest. It makes things happen. So we saw 9/11. Saturn was opposite Pluto. And it made manifest the powers of Pluto. Pluto in Sagittarius, foreign terror coming to America's shore, Saturn and Pluto lining up across the American ascendant. It was almost kind of spooky. So the two most powerful forces for change that we find in terms of events are Saturn conjunct Pluto and Saturn conjunct Neptune. And what's happening at the moment is that Neptune and Pluto are within 60 degrees of each other, and they have been for a long time, and they will be for quite a while yet. So Saturn conjoins Pluto, and then 5 years later conjoins Neptune. And so you get this double whammy, and we're at the tail end of this double whammy. It's big. It's world-shaking. There's a whole new world order coming about. The combined power of Saturn conjunct Pluto 5 years ago, and now Saturn conjunct Neptune, which is upon us. There's a whole new world order. Now, we saw this happen before, back in the 80s. Saturn conjoined Pluto right at the end of 1982. And then 5.5 years later, in 1989, early 1989, Saturn conjoined Neptune. So what did we have there? Saturn conjoined Pluto. It was the era of Thatcher and Reagan. It was the era of deregulation, creating a new boom in the economy, and also of taking on the Soviet Union, of going, this is the evil empire. We are taking them on. Yeah, that's how they viewed it. Yeah. And then 1989, it's like Saturn Pluto had done its work. Yeah. It's like Saturn Pluto is the underground force, the underground detonation, the build-up of power. Pluto. Saturn Neptune, that's when the Berlin Wall fell. Yeah. And that's when the whole of communism fell. So you can see those two working in conjunction, because one argument for the way that communism fell was that they went bankrupt. They did actually go bankrupt, and Reagan was doing his best to make them go bankrupt by inventing fantasy weapons like Star Wars. He outspent them on defense. So, I think it was a good thing. I think communism in practice, there's never been a reckoning. There's been a reckoning with fascism. We all know what fascism's like. There's a huge reckoning about Nazism. They never quite did it with the Japanese, which they should have done, but they did it with Nazism. They did it with South Africa, but it never happened with Russia. So in the West, we still have this, we're still likely to, socialism, it could be really nice if only we got it right. I've already banged on about this one in another video, but it's an important one. So we don't understand. It was what George Orwell was writing about. He was writing about left-wing authoritarianism because of what was happening in the USSR. And we need to pay attention to that. So that was what was happened, the last Saturn, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune in the 80s. And now we've got another one. We had Saturn, Pluto 5 years ago. And now we've got Saturn, Neptune. And we don't quite know what this means yet, but we kind of do. It is becoming clear. It's becoming clear that the whole post-war liberal order is going. And what's returning, and this is the main point of this video, what's returning is what's called realpolitik. We've had a holiday from history since the war, really, and particularly since the end of the Cold War. This holiday from history was the idea that if we're nice to each other, everyone will be nice back. If we're nice to Mr. Putin, he'll be nice back. If we're nice to the Chinese, they'll be nice back. If we're nice to Islamic fundamentalists, they'll be nice back. That's the liberal mindset. We must always be nice. Yeah, you're a bad person if you're not nice. Yeah, and empathetic, even at the cost of your own civilization and your own culture. That's not how things have been historically. It's never been like that. It's about being big powers squaring up against each other. That's history. This is why Europe has no longer got a voice at the moment in world affairs. Barely. It just wrings its hands. It hasn't got an answer. And America, China, and Russia, they're all squaring up to each other. That's just how things are historically. That's what you have to do if you're a major power. You have to square up to the other ones. And if you square up well, there'll be peace. Yeah, relatively speaking. Particularly with nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a major war. Well, we haven't so far, not with nuclear weapons. They've actually saved us from nuclear war. So, Saturn, Pluto, right, under, in Capricorn, a year after its conjunction in 2022, Putin invaded Ukraine when Mars was the exact same degree as the Saturn-Pluto conjunction had been. Mars, the planet of war. So that showed that Putin's invasion of Ukraine was a characteristic, something to pay attention to in understanding Saturn-Pluto. He was the beginning. It was that sword shaking, It's a return to the great game of major powers squaring up to each other, because it broke all the rules that we had in Europe and the international order, international law. Well, international law, it's a great idea, but it was always a fantasy because it's not enforceable. All it meant was that the bad guys just carried on doing what they were going to do anyway, while the good guys wrung their hands. That's all it meant. Didn't stop China taking over Tibet. Didn't stop Russia pinching Crimea. There was nothing anyone could do or did. Oh, a few sanctions, but they didn't care. So that's what's happening. So Saturn, Pluto, that injection of power, real power, how the world actually works. That is Capricorn, the sign that it was in. I'm not saying it's right. That is not what I'm saying. Don't get me wrong in thinking I'm saying that, we should have all of this. I'm just saying this is how big collectives work. It's real. And that Saturn, Pluto began to remind us of realpolitik through Putin's invasion of Ukraine. He just ignored all the international laws, ignored all the sanctions that we put on him. Now, as Saturn comes up to Neptune, well, it's in Aries. So it's about me and my interests. That's Aries, and there is a place for that. The sign that it's been in before is Pisces, which is the sign of everything. It has no boundaries. It's globalization. So we're moving from this era of Saturn, Neptune at the end of Pisces, the globalization era, into the era of countries asserting their own interests and creating a new balance of power around that. And you see, that is what is happening with America and Greenland. Trump isn't just it's not just some kind of idiosyncratic thing, him wanting Greenland. You can see he is securing the Western Hemisphere. Now, it's not my job here to say he is right or wrong doing that, but in terms of realpolitik, as it's called, it is the right thing to do. You can see China is hungry, for world power. It's going to be taking Taiwan at some point or other. It's expanding its influence in the South China Sea and all around there. Russia, well, we know what Russia's doing. It wants its old territories back in Eastern Europe. It wants that bulwark against the West, because Russia, we think of it as vast, but most of it is useless to it. 80% of it is back over in the East. It's this European bit where the population is and where the industry is, and they want their influence, and they also want their protection. So that's what they're doing. America is securing the Western Hemisphere. It's saying, right, we're having it the way we want it here. Yeah, that in our interests. Yeah, so we're getting rid of any communist countries. Yeah, we're not going to let them carry on being communist because they are ideologically opposed to us, and you don't do that near us. So Cuba will fall, Venezuela will fall. I'm not quite sure the politics of Colombia, but there is certainly a big problem with drugs coming from both Colombia and Mexico. They're going to stop that. And they want to pinch Greenland because, Russia and China are moving into that area. The high north is opening up. So that's what's happening. It's a return to realpolitik. And that's what we're going to be seeing under Saturn Neptune. Neptune does seem to be a political planet. Why should that be? It's about collectives. It's about idealism, in a way. Neptune is idealism. When communism fell, it was a reality check, Saturn, on this idealistic political system, which was communism. And here we go. Saturn Neptune is a reality check. This time is a reality check on liberalism, on the UN, on its idea that we could all shake hands without threatening each other. And that's just not how the world works, and never has worked that way. It's a reality check. So yes, the liberalism is an ideal, and there's a reality check on that. So that's what's going this time. Okay. So there is a new world order coming about. It's about China, Russia, and the USA squaring up to each other. The wonderful ideal of the UN and everything, that's just been cast aside. That's just not how it works when it comes to the self-interest, when push comes to shove, of countries, and particularly the major powers. So where does that leave the EU and the UN? Well, the UN has got this Venus conjunct Neptune in Libra, and it's got the sun in the 7th house. So it really is these ideals around partnership that aren't necessarily grounded. Venus conjunct Neptune, it's a wonderful idea of partnership, a romantic ideal of partnership. Yeah, it tends to be not grounded, and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is coming up to oppose that. And Europe itself is faced with a choice. The EU has its angles right at the end of the mutable signs. So Saturn-Neptune is about to make its final crossing. It's going to hard aspect all of them. And as it does so, well, Europe is just seeming an irrelevance at the moment on the international stage. It has no voice. It's not being taken seriously. It has the economic clout to be a world power, but it's not taking it. It can't unite. It is unraveling. There is a new paradigm coming for the EU. It has a decision to make, how it wants to be in the world, because it is founded on ideals, and those ideals are being brushed aside. Well, ideals can be the way we put things to ourselves. Europe was founded as much from fear of the EU rather, was founded as much from fear of Hitler as it was, let's have a wonderful partnership. It was France and Germany getting together, going, let's have economic union, so that we don't keep destroying ourselves, each other. Yeah. Napoleon, Bismarck, First World War, Second World War. Yeah. 200 years of the heart of Europe destroying itself, France and Germany. So they came together out of fear that they wouldn't do that again. And well, there always is that potential, and you can't just sit on it. And as we've seen, countries eventually square up. A lot of the problem last century, it was Germany. It was a new country. It had something to prove. It's got nothing to prove anymore. You know, it's been master of Europe for a long time now. So I don't think the European countries are going to invade each other again. So they will find some new way of being together. That's what's happening at the moment. The old is unraveling. Saturn, Neptune in Pisces. That's an unraveling. But there is something new coming the way of Europe. But I don't know what that is. Okay, there we go.